Ifa ọgbà olóru, ó ṣe àwòrán Ifá ti gbọ́. Good morning and welcome again to another Ifa Temple service with Okanra and Sode Temple here in Miami, Florida. My name is Baba Anthony and I am an Awo with the temple, excuse me. So our conversation today is titled Looking for Guidance. Looking for guidance. One of the questions I get the most on my path of this daily practice is, how do I find guidance? How do I find a good elder? How do I find someone who can support me? The challenge for many of us is that we did not grow up in this religious practice. Many of us found this practice as adults, and everything is brand new to us. The structure, how we practice daily, why is there initiation? All these questions are asked. We know it's important because of the information that it holds in guiding us. We know it's important because it's a practice that our ancestors held closely to them. So we want to be a part of it. However, the challenge is always choosing the right person for guidance, because unlike Christianity or Islam or Judaism or many of the other practices in the world, it's hard to learn this faith without someone guiding you, without an elder, without a leader, someone who is taking you through the system and showing you how to practice and how to use it to live your best life to your full destiny, right? So those of you who have come to Ifa and Orisha practice, the one thing I want to stress is that it's important that you do not rush into this process. It is a lifelong process of learning and understanding who you are and learning the faith. So know that everything can't happen in a day. Everything can't happen within a week. Take your time. Ashe. So the things I want us to think about in today's conversation, what are the qualities that are important for a religious elder, a religious leader, someone who's going to guide you? How do they treat people? How do they act in challenging situations? Do they live the life that they talk about? And are they knowledgeable? Are they knowledgeable? Ashe. Ashe, Ashe. So let us start with the Odu of Osameji. Osameji. Land on an Iya tree, do not land on glue. This was the Ifa cast for all the birds who were living in the forest. They were advised to offer ebo. So one day in the forest, I want you to understand the importance of Ifa. Ifa's many, many stories. One, you'll hear that Ifa is cast for people, Ifa is cast for birds, Ifa is cast for trees. We're listening to the story to understand how these stories give us information. So back to the story. One day, all the birds of the forest gathered together to select their leader, to select the one that was going to guide them. The things that they thought about for having a good leader were the leader's poise, the leader's elegance, how smart they were. Are they brave? Are they compassionate? These were things that were important to the birds of the forest. After a lot of time of deliberating, they thought that the Osin bird was the most qualified bird to be their leader. For this reason, Osin was invited to be made king of the birds. What was interesting is that as time went on, Osin thought to himself, you know what? I'm glad they chose me as the leader because I'm the smartest. I look the best. I can figure things out quickly, and I'm also brave. I am the most qualified to be the king of all birds. You can imagine what that looked like to the other birds. So Oseen decided he would start to create laws among the other birds on how they would live. He was going to organize them to make sure that everything was where it needed to be. So the first law he created was up on the top of this particular tree. This is the tallest tree in the forest. I am the only one that can land there. I need to be above all. I need to be able to see my kingdom. And wherever he sat, no one else was able to sit there. Okay. So the birds were watching this and they were, saying, okay, all right, well, that's fine. After some time had passed, Oseen was looking around. He's watching all the other birds from his high pedestal, if you will. And he was watching them. He wanted to see who was as smart as he was, right? No one was really giving him any good advice on how to lead, right? And they were just, so he was like, you know what? I think I need to just continue making the laws. I don't need anybody giving me advice. They're not as smart as I am anyway. You can imagine how that looked. The next thing he decided to do is make a law about the food that he ate. No one could eat what I am eating. He decided to make a law about clothing. No one could look as nice or nicer than me. No one can drink from the same place that I drank. Oh, goodness. You can imagine the challenges that Oseen started to see. The other birds looked at him as if he was now full of pride. He had too much pride to the point where he was pushing other birds away. And the community started to see him as a pest. They started to plan and plot. They needed to know how they can get rid of him because he was no longer thinking he was a part of the community. He put himself above the community. So what did they do? They got this special sap that they took and they decided that they were going to place it where he sat so that when he went to land and sit in his space high above everybody else in the forest, that he would be stuck there and would not ever be able to leave. So they started on their plan. And this was the entire community that was plotting against him. It was like, we need him out. What was interesting on that day is that Oseen had slept that night and he actually had a dream. But the dream was that he was tied to a stake, stoned by the other birds, and then taken to the forest, into the center of the forest, and burned alive. Oh, you can imagine that he woke up in great fear of this dream. It was so vivid, he didn't know what to do. And so what did he do? He goes to have Ifa cast for himself. The Awo says, there's a plan that people are plotting against you. It's because you're not treating them well. It's because of your high-handedness or lack of compassion that you have offended all those around you. The Awo said you need to offer this particular ebo, and you need to work on developing humility for yourself. If you do not have humility for yourself, right? If you do not have humility around the other birds, right? Around everyone else, you're going to find yourself in quite a bit of a challenge. If you do not respect others' opinions, you're going to start to have a challenge in your life. Oseen says, Ashe. So he offered the ebo. He took the Awo's advice to heart. The next morning, when he woke up, he gathered all the birds of the community together and he started to apologize for the way that he was acting. He begged and pleaded with them for their forgiveness. He explained to them that he wanted to hear their opinions on how their community can be better. He explained to them his wrongdoings and the way that he behaved in all of the situations. Right? The elders of the community stood back and they watched, and they could see that Oseen was now in a place where he was experiencing growth. He learned that there was a problem, and he tried to rectify it to make it better. So they gave him a chance. And they explained, what was interesting is that they explained what they were going to do to him if he did not change his ways. And because they had already set the trap with the glue at the top of this particular tree, he was informed that he should never go to sit on that tree again. So Essene heard the advice from the elders and from the people of the community, and he changed his ways. From that point moving forward, he lived a life of support from those in his community and lived a life of happiness. So the first thing I want to point out, right, when we are looking for elders or people who should lead us, it's important that they show a sense of humility within their practice, within their life, with their family, with those who come to meet them. It's important that they show humility. It's important that they listen, right? If you have an elder or leader that's living in a way where they are high-handed, it's my way or the highway, you come to learn from me, sit down and keep your mouth shut. You should start to question, are they an effective leader? As a practitioner of this faith, it's important that we are heard. There will be times where we will have to listen to our elder in a way that is respectful, but it should never be a time when we're being guided that we are not heard. I cannot stress that to you enough. Coming up in this practice, I've experienced many different types of leadership. Some who were kind and generous, some who were very high-handed to the point of, their motto was, when you come to work or to be with me, that you can't speak while you're there. Don't say a word. In a new situation, it's almost as if you're now a child, even as a full-grown adult with a family, a job, a career, all those things. You've now been reverted back to the position of being a child. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. How do you grow in that situation? Right? Sometimes our personal ego gets us into a place where we won't accept it. So that creates a contentious issue, right? And so you have to step away anyway. But even if your ego allows you to be in that position, how effective is the communication? How effective is the learning environment? How effective is the growth for yourself and all those that surround you? These are things that we need to think about, right? Look for a leader who shows humility, respect, and has consideration for your ideas. Ashe. So let's go to the next Odu from Otura Meiji. When the horse wakes up, his hooves will make imprints on the ground everywhere it goes. This was Ifa's message for Oru Otsubudo. Excuse me, that one is a difficult one to say. Osubudo, the son of Tahoe. He was advised to offer a bow for him to be blessed with many followers, and for him to treat visitors and strangers well with courtesy. All right, Ashe. So let's talk about the story of Oshubudo. Oshubudo. Oshubudo was one of the many children of an elder named Tahoe. On the other hand, Tahoe was a prominent person in Ipuapo land who was popular everywhere in Ipuapo. In the environment, everyone looked to Tahoe as being a great person, someone who was respected by everyone. And Oshubudo took after his father in many different ways. He was also popular. He was good spirited, happy, lively, right? He would support those who were around him. And he was also very humble, which is important. So Oshubudo, being very concerned about how he would be and grow in his life, he decided for himself that one day he would go for a Ifa consultation. And he had a few questions. He says, one, he was concerned about carrying on the tradition of his father. Will he have as many supporters and people that he would lead as his father would? Would he have influence over the community the same way his father had? Would he be loved the same way his father was? Right? These are questions that he thought to himself. So during the consultation, the Odu of Otura Meji came. The Babalao let him know that he will be loved, he will be respected, he will have those folks follow him around, he will influence many of them, even to the point where the Awo said that he would be even greater than his father. Oshubudo was happy to hear this advice. The Awo continued and he said, what is important for you to live your life and to fulfill your destiny is you being able to take care of all those who come to you. You need to be generous of friends, family, friends, family, strangers, everyone that you come in contact with. So he gave them the Ebo materials that needed to be offered. And he told them that when this Ebo was offered, it was going to be important for him to bring those together in the community and to have a feast so that everyone can celebrate together. He heard the advice of the Awo. So Oshubudo offered his Ebo. He took to heart the advice of the Awo that casted Ifa for him. So he goes and he starts to plan a great party. And he invited everyone he knew and told them to all bring a friend and more. You can imagine this was probably one of the greatest block parties to ever happen in Ifa. Oshubudo sought out all that he could to provide for all those that were around him. Within time, this became the biggest party that had ever happened, as I had mentioned. Tahoe, the father, was proud of Oshubudo. Oshubudo became one of the people who was well respected in the town. He was known for being generous. And after time, he continued this process. And the most amazing thing is that as he gave to others selflessly, without any consideration of what they would give back, as he gave, Ifa and those around him repaid him 10 times over. It was as if the more kindness he gave, the more he did for those that were around him, that the more kept coming to his home, the more respect he was giving, the more acceptance. Oshubudo lived an amazing and happy life and died a happy and contented man. Ashe. So here we have a story of another leader. When we look at this leader's situation, right? He came from a good background. He had a father who was well respected. He had a uh, group of people in the community that already supported him. So he came up in life knowing the importance of taking care of himself and taking care of those who were around him. That's important, right? He was humble, he was respectful, he was good natured, generous, hardworking, and he had high respect for Ifa. So some would say he was God fearing. That is an important aspect for leaders and elders to have. When you go into the presence of someone who is going to be teaching you or training you or supporting you, it's important that you feel comfortable. It's important that you feel comfortable. If you go to their home, you go to their home. And pardon me for saying this, it's not that everyone needs to give you what's inside their home. It's not that at all. But if you go to someone's home and you're not even offered a glass of water, or they're not considering the fact that you came from a long distance, hopefully maybe there's something that they can offer you to eat. Even if you're not hungry, the act of offering is important, right? An elder should be gracious to those that support them. I believe that's an important thing to have, right? Unfortunately, I've heard stories of folks who have gone to elders' homes and have worked and been aside next to their elder for hours, 8-10 hours in a day. And then they have to run out, like no water or food was offered to them, and they had to run out and get themselves something to eat before they passed out, get themselves something to drink. That's not a good situation, right? I think that's important for all of us, even as practitioners. If we have guests in our home, if we have people in our home that are coming to see us, and I think as a community or as humans, that's natural behavior. So if you're in a place where you experience the opposite of this natural behavior, then that maybe should raise some questions in your mind, right? Does this person consider others that are around them? And how do you treat others that are around you? If an elder comes to your home, are you offering them food? Are you offering them something to drink? Are you prepared for that visit? All right. This goes both ways in the process of learning and practicing Ifan Orisha. Right. This is an important part of the process for sure. So let us consider that in our practice, in our daily movements, right? So let's go to another Odu. This Odu comes from, this message comes from the Odu of Ogbe Yeku. Ogbe Yeku. We have Ogbe on the right and Oyeku on the left. Ashe. A courageous person cannot initiate himself into Ifa. A wise person cannot award chieftaincy title to himself. A sharp knife cannot fashion its own handle. These were Ifa's declarations to Ogbeyeku, who shall organize all the Amalu in a systematic manner. He was advised to offer Ebo. So let me give you just a little bit of backstory. So the Odu Ifa have a specific order that they are in. We have the 16 major Odu, which are called Meijis. 16 major Odu. That means, for example, we have Eji Ogbe on one side, right-hand side, it says Ogbe. On the other hand, it says Ogbe. Oyeku Meiji is the same thing. On one side, it says Oyeku, and on the other side, it says Oyeku. 16 of those major signs. We have also what is called the Amolu. That is the combination of the other 16 major Odus, and that equals 240 Odus to follow those 16 major Odus. There is another story within Odu Ifa that speaks about Ofunmeji at one time, Hepa Odu, Ofunmeji being the most eldest Odu, and at one point was supposed to be the leader of all the Odus. But something had happened, and I'll share that story on another cast, but something had happened which allowed Ejiobe, the youngest Odu, to find himself in the place of being the leader of all Odus. So let us begin with the story from Ogbeyeku. When all of the Odu were coming from heaven to earth, Ofunmeji led a group followed by Oshe, and Ejiobe was in the 16th position, while Oyeku Meji was in the 15th position. When all of the Amolu, the combination Odus, came into the world, Ofunshe was in the 17th position, while Obeyeku was given the 256th position. These positions were the same for quite some time. However, as I was saying just a bit ago, Ofunmeji and Osumeji were removed from their leadership positions. And then Ejiobe and Oyaku were moved to the top. Well, this caused a bit of grief among the other Amalus, because now with the changing of the first major 16, there was consideration of all of the other Odus. Would they change their positions of importance? Who would be the leader? How would we get organized? Well, Obeyeku, being the last Odu originally in the 256, found himself in a position where he wanted to assist all of the other Odu with working on being organized. So Obeyeku said, you know what, I'm gonna figure this out. He finds himself going to the Babalaos to have Ifa cast to see how he can be successful in this situation. The Awo let him know that, one, he was going to be successful at what he was going to do, and he's going to be honored. However, the challenge was now he was going to find himself in a position that others were wishing harm against him. People would revolt against him. They would condemn him and conspire against him. No matter what Obeyeku tried, the Awo let him know that the others would try to stop him no matter what the situation was. But what did the Awo tell him in the end? I told him, persevere, be consistent, be determined, and be purposeful. Do not try to do it with anger. Do not try to exhibit revenge for those who are working against you. Be good in the process. Obeyeku heard the advice and offered his ebo. So Obeyeku calls all of the other 239 Odus together. He calls them all together. He says, listen, I think it's time we focus on trying to organize ourselves in placement as best we could. I think it's important that we, as a group, come to a decision on what we can do to find ourselves in that position where we can move together and be in agreement. Well, you can only imagine. His greatest naysayer, if you will, right from the very beginning was Ofunshe. Because now Ofunshe says, who are you? I'm currently the leader of all of these other Odu. And I say that the fact that you're calling this meeting is a problem. The fact that you are saying to us that we need to organize is a problem. You're of no importance to any of us. Right? So, what did Ofunshe do? Well, he gathered all of his brothers in Odu, those who start with Ofun, Ofun Obe, Ofun Nerete, right? He starts to ask them to conspire against Obeyeku. It was like, we are above him. Why should we listen to anything that he says? As time goes on, the conspiracies grew greater and greater. At a certain time, Obeyeku's life became extremely unbearable. But he remembered what the Awos had said. They told him that this was coming. They told him that the challenges from others would be there. And they said, no matter what, persevere, work hard, and use common sense in this situation. Don't think about taking revenge or fighting back. Be intelligent in your actions. Continue to work with those who will hear you. Right? So, Obeyeku continued. Ofunshe did everything that he could to try to unseat Obeyeku from this position, this discussion that he was having. Right? He did everything that he could to try to push him aside. And no matter what he did, Obeyeku didn't stop. Now, here comes the problem. There were others that sort of felt a certain way about how Obeyeku was going about the process. They weren't completely upset, but they felt a certain way and they wanted to be higher in position. But here's what Ofunshe did. Whenever someone else came to him with a complaint, he would place them up in a high position, say, okay, you're ranked here. And then another person came to complain, he puts them even higher than the previous person. No, well, you're ranked here. He tried to please everybody. You could only guess that this backfired on Ofunshe. He found himself in a place where even the people that he was trying to help by placing them in a higher order, they were fighting against each other because, no, I'm in first. No, I'm in first. So Ofunshe says, I'm supposed to be here, right? It created total chaos. This was a problem. Obeyeku calls them all together again. And he says, listen, I understand that you all are fighting, but we need to do this in a respectable manner. They said, okay, what do you suggest? What should we do in this situation? Obeyeku says, let us look at our elders. Let us see how they are now ranked. Ejiobe, Oyeku Meji, Iwori Meji, Odi Meji, right? We're looking at the order of the first 16 Odu, and then we guide ourselves with that same order. We get ourselves in order in that same process. We find our importance that way. The others looked at each other and they took some time and they're like, Ashe, that makes sense. Right? Everybody started to come together and started to realize where their positions were. When all arrangements and everything came together, it became easy to understand the order of all of the 240 Odus to follow the first 16. Once everyone found their place, things started to calm down and happiness returned to all of the other, all of the Odu together, right? Ashe. So here we have a story of someone who comes into the leadership position, being technically the youngest of the Odu, right? But he used his intelligence, he used the knowledge of Ifa to help guide him, to help support him in this process. Something we have to think about is the oldest person of the group is not always the best person to lead the group. I need you to hear that again. The oldest person of the group should not always be the person that leads the group. This doesn't mean we need to disrespect people that are older than us. It just means that the community needs to come around the person who's the leader that has the best interest of the community at heart. Right? We see in this particular story, the elder exhibited anger. The elder spoke out and created even more chaos in this particular situation. And the one who became the leader in the group was the most calm, cool, and collect. That is important. When you're in a situation with someone who is guiding you in Ifa and Orisha practice, if they are treating you like someone who is not important, if they are exhibiting anger towards you, if they are creating chaos, if they are making your life challenging, you leave them and you say, man, wow, they really got angry today. I'm glad I wasn't on the bad side of that. That's not a good place to be. What's interesting is some people thrive, or they say they thrive in those those types of communities. I need my elder to put me in my place. Well, there certainly is a difference between someone who is showing tough love and someone who is making love really tough, right? You're not that, you don't love them, but you know they're tough. You're like, ugh, sometimes I just, I'd rather stay home than be there. If you're ever in that place because you feel that they're going to be exhibiting anger towards you or someone you know, that's probably not a good position to be in. All right, that's something that we have to try to understand and make keep that out of our life, right? An elder is someone who needs to be respected. It's someone who does not act hastily, someone who does not say that they're willing to take revenge on someone because things were done bad to them. Unfortunately, I've seen that in my life. Right? Oh, you want to do something to me? Well, I'm going to do something back to you. That's not the way to live. It is not the way to live. That does not breed good community. Consider that when thinking about being an elder, right? I'm always of thought, I always think to myself, the elder should exhibit good character. They should be a role model. They should demonstrate what it is like to be in the community, right? And I think about the Odu of the temple, Okanran Sode, the Odu of our temple. Ashe says, we cannot be the child of a Babalao and exhibit anger. We cannot be the child of an herbalist and exhibit recalcitrance. We cannot be the child of a community leader and spoil the community. The child of Okanran Sode, he was advised to offer a bow, he complied. Now, Ade Kambi, the child of Okanran Sode, I've discovered that Awo are tying Ifa beads, and I've decided to join them in tying mine. This particular Odo reminds me that a community leader, a person who's in charge, the Babalao, the herbalist, whoever it is, they need to display what we need to follow. They have to. We don't need leaders that are displaying anger. We don't need leaders that are spoiling the community. Their families cannot be displaying anger, and their families cannot be spoiling the community. It is not the way that we should be living our lives. So we need to see our elders in a place of living a life that is good and a life that we maybe want to live one day. Now, I'm not going to tell you that elders should be perfect. I hope as you're listening to this, you're not saying to yourself, but what elder is perfect? No elder is perfect. No elder will live their life without trouble. But you have to ask yourself, what does that elder look like when they are in trouble? These are all things we have to think about. Ashe. Let's go to our final Odu of the day. This comes from Oturupon Meiji. Oturupon Meiji. The wise cannot tie water into a knot with a piece of cloth. The knowledgeable cannot know the number of sand grains on the ground. The traveler cannot reach where the road ends. These were Ifa's declarations to Alabahun Ajapa when he gathered all the wisdom in the world and was going to hide it in the top of the palm tree. He was advised to offer Ebo. Okay, so Alabahun Ajapa, the tortoise, was a very, very wise person. So much so that he believed he had more wisdom than Olodumare. Sorry, I kind of chuckled there, but he was in the position. I have more wisdom than God. Could you imagine in any other faith where there was someone alive that said, I had more wisdom than God. I have more wisdom than Allah. I have more wisdom than Buddha, right? Many of us would be looking at them like they're crazy. But I continue. So the tortoise was in a position where he had this calabash of wisdom, and he was going to take it and keep all the wisdom for himself. And he was going to put himself in a place where others needed to come to him. He was going to hide himself in a tree with this calabash of wisdom so that others would come to him. Oh, he started plotting and planning. He started thinking about how much money he would make. He started thinking about how many riches how the riches he would have, the homes that he would have, all good things that were coming to his life. He was planning. He was like, I got this. So he goes to the Babalao to find support for his plan, as many of us do. So he goes, and the Odu of Oturupon Meiji comes. The Awo informed Alabahun Ajapa that he had a plan in mind. But his plan would only work if he sought the advice of others. The tortoise thought to himself, sought the advice of others. But who has more advice than me? I have the calabash of all knowledge. The tortoise started to find himself getting to the place where he was getting angry. He said to the Babalao, he's like, I'm the wisest person on earth. Why would I want to listen to others? He said to himself, when I become rich, I'm going to punish this Babalao. Right? He said, I'm never going to come back to this Babalao. I'm not going to. He left in complete anger. He was beside himself in the way that he thought the Babalao was trying to talk down to him, saying that he wasn't the most intelligent. So he leaves to continue on his path. So the tortoise finds himself in the tree that he likes. He's going to put himself in and keep his calabash. He says, okay. He sets a plan for himself. He takes the calabash, he ties it to his belly, ties it to himself, and he goes, all right. And I'm going to start to try to climb the tree. Just imagine what that looks like. Here we have the most intelligent tortoise in the world. He has a calabash strapped to his belly, and he is attempting to climb the tree to hide his calabash of wisdom. Well, as you can guess, as he starts to climb the tree, he falls down, can't quite get a grip. He's like, I'm going to do this, okay? Let me try it again. He goes, it falls down. He kept going. Nighttime had come, kept trying through the night. The next morning had come, he kept trying. He could not get himself up this tree. Incidentally, who was walking by was Igbin, the snail. Snail was watching Ajapa. And he's looking at him. He's going, what are you doing? Ajapa says, well, I'm just trying to get up to the top of this tree. Igbin analyzes the situation. He looks at Ajapa. He says, but you are creating much trouble for yourself because you have that calabash tied to your belly. You need to slide it around your back so that you can give yourself better grip to get to the top of the tree. Hmm. Japa thought to himself for a moment. He says, okay, let me try it. So he slides the calabash to his back, right? He climbs, he finds himself, he's like, okay, I got this. Tortoise starts climbing up the tree, right? And once he reached the top of the tree, he's like, wow, that was pretty easy. Yeah, I did it. Nice. I got here. Lo and behold, when he got to the top of the tree, Eshuodara appeared to Ajapa. Eshuodara appeared to Ajapa. And Eshuodara says, I thought you had the most knowledge in the world. You see that big beam down there was the one who helped you solve your problem. So he must obviously be wiser than you. Japa thought to himself, I'm a mess. What did I do? Like how is this snail more knowledgeable than me? Ajapa, in his anger, takes his calabash, throws it down to the ground, smashes it everywhere. He was so disappointed in himself that he couldn't continue, and he had lost his calabash of knowledge. Ashe. So let us think about this story. Let us think about this story and how it applies to elders. Something I've come to understand in my life as a person in my field of music and my practice of Ifa is that no one has the monopoly on all knowledge. If your guide, your elder, your leader says that they know everything that there is, I would highly suggest that you run. I would highly suggest that you find yourself in another place, because that is not the place for you. Your elders should be in a position when they are constantly learning, when they are constantly trying to better themselves, right? If they are in a place where they put themselves above everybody, it's something you should consider. You might need to step away. So there is no monopoly on knowledge everywhere. The information from Odu Ifa is vast. It is grand. The position that I am in as a practitioner, as an Awu, is multi-layered. And this is right now one of the best places that I feel that I have been in. I have an elder who I am studying with, a Baba Ifa. I have support with the temple. My elders have an elder. Their elder has a community of elders, right? We feel like the knowledge will never end with all of the people around us. And that is what many of us need. That is what many of us need, because we know Ifa is vast. No one person can have all of the knowledge of Ifa. No one person can have all of the knowledge of God. No one person can have everything in their mind. They can try, but it won't work, right? Something I want us all to think about is the idea of when we are looking for guidance in Ifa and Orisha, we must consider many different things. You're watching their character, how they treat others. Do they have elders? Can they seek advice on a situation that pushes above them or a situation that is difficult? Do they rush into situations or rush you into situations out of fear? I humbly suggest that whoever is guiding you, right, they should be giving you hope that tomorrow things will get better. Not that your life is going to end today if you don't initiate and pay this money. That's not Ifa practice. So I hope you think about many of those things when it comes to your life, and the people who are surrounding you. I hope you have a wonderful week. I want to thank you for joining me today for this message. I hope that you stay blessed. Please reach out to Okanran Sode if you have any questions for myself or my elders. We are here to support those who are looking for support in Ifa Orisha. Thank you for joining me. Aboru, Aboye, Aboshisho Obata.